Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining us today for our webinar, Can Retailers Handle the Truth? Why Consumers Are Really Leaving Stores. I'm joined today. My name is Greg Buzek. I'm joined today here with Lee Holman from IHL.
Hey, guys.
We are going to take you through our inventory distortion study and a lot of other economic data as well today. So we're thankful that you're here. You're spending time with us today. This is a popular one. We've got 425 people registered, so I know people are pouring in right now. We're thankful for you guys taking time to be with us today. First of all, we just want to thank our sponsors for this study. So this is a model that we have built for the last 15 years at IHL, and we put this information together, and we're releasing that thanks to the sponsorships of IBM, Sesame, GoTag, and Zebra, and their Antuit AI division there, as well as Itasca and Tools Group, who allowed us to use a consumer study here. And we're going to present a little bit of teaser information on the consumer side that we're going to go through. Now, with that, chat is open on the right side, and we highly encourage you to use the chat and make it fun and interactive today. That's on the right side. You can push that out, and go through and type away, introduce yourself, etc. Some do's or don'ts. First part of this webinar is going to be a lot of data that can be taken politically one way or the other, and I'm going to do my best to try to just provide the Joe Friday facts and some analysis of what I see without taking a political bent. Please don't leave that at home. Go to Facebook, wherever you want to vent on that stuff. Don't do that in the chat. Have fun with it. Discuss the merits of the technology or the data points that surprise you. There will be some things that surprise you here. Feel free to comment on how things are in your area, where you shop, type of things. Try to leave out promoting any specific vendors, and by all means, ask questions. We'll try to address them either in real time, or we'll do that at the end of the things. Now, what's fair game is football. Any kind of football or football. Okay, it's fair game. Type in, who's your team? Are you a college fan? I'm a big Buckeye fan. Lee's a Maryland fan. Okay. Do you have kids playing, or is your thing soccer or football there? Premier Champions Leagues. Do you have kids playing? Let us know there, and then comment on whether or not Manchester United has dropped so much that AFC Richmond from Ted Lasso could go with them right now. I have a friend who every day puts on Facebook, Manchester United is sinking sand. So go ahead and go with that. And so with that, we are going to move forward here. We're announcing two products today. First is the research study that we're going to present. That is a free, thanks to our sponsors that we mentioned there. But we're also releasing, instead of a detailed report where we just throw out more charts and more charts and more charts, we've been tracking this for 15 years. And we are releasing today as well our over and out inventory distortion matrix. This is the full data model that we use from data from 2015 on. So the impact of COVID, all those sort of things. But it's 4 worldwide regions, 10 retail segments. This is designed for you guys that are vendors that are looking for an independent data point for your solution to attack. You want to know how big that problem is in specialty stores in North America versus Europe versus Asia. We've got that data. If you've got something in hospitality, you want to do that. So it looks at overstocks and out of stocks. How big is it? Who's to blame? We look at beyond just empty shelves. Is it an employee issue, training issue, spoilage, theft, etc. for that? So that is going to be available as well. We are going to share that information later, and with a link that will give you an opportunity to download our slides today, because that's usually the first question we get. The report itself, and also more information on the inventory distortion matrix. So with that, we'll go ahead and get started. So we're going to turn off the cameras now and focus more on the data for you as we go forward. So first of all, start wide. Let's narrow ourselves down. What's really going on in the world? Well, I think the first thing that you've got to factor in is that real inflation by country is ranging between 8 to 15%. So when you look at all of these numbers, you have to subtract 8 to 15% from those numbers, depending on where you are, to get a real CPI type of indication of things. Germany, the impacts of the war are really, inflation are really starting to hit Germany for the first time, literally in June. We saw inflation really start to hit for the first time there. The UK has been down since April. It's continuing to slow there. We have a really important economic indicator to show you there. France, Spain, Italy on retail sales has stayed positive, mostly because the comparisons the year before, they were still in heavy lockdowns for things. Then you've got countries like Poland and Hungary that have gotten part of the influx of the 6.9 million Ukrainians that have been refugees there. And Poland continues to average about 21% growth for the year there. Hungary is starting to slow, although the growth was really high. Their support of Russia is starting the economic piece to slow dramatically in terms of travelers and other folks there supporting their economy. Then we look at China. China is slowed significantly, mainly because of the continued lockdowns there. And we're going to talk a lot about China here, but the growth is down to 2.7%, which is really rough for China because they generally have to be at about 7 or 8% growth to really stave off unemployment in sectors there. Japan up, but every month since October, with the exception of February, but just treading water, but still moving forward. And then South Korea in June went negative for the first time. It had been the star in Asia all throughout 2021. So the thing I want to highlight before I move forward is there's a lot of data here that is negative data, but there is good news. And we're going to talk about some good news as we go forward here as well. Next, right now, as inflation is starting to peak and start to drop a little bit in the United States, it's still continuing to grow in the UK, in the Eurozone. That is mainly due to fuel, and I'll show you that impact specifically. But the most important metrics is the English breakfast metrics. So literally 17% increase in the English breakfast cost. This, believe it or not, is probably more reliable than our CPI in North America, but it shows that the month-over-month price changes are continuing to grow there, but a huge uptick in the June, July, August timeframe of what's happening with inflation in the UK, and that is certainly slowing their economy there for other parts of retail. As I mentioned, not surprising, the cost of electricity and fuel oil, etc., are significantly jumped here since the invasion. That is here, and you see it specifically in the UK, where things have jumped significantly there when there was a heat wave as well that drove up prices for those that had air conditioning for things. But that electricity thing and the gas prices, the things we're dealing with in the US, are being felt all around the world, and often in a much worse situation. Next is the euro is on parity with the dollar now, which is somewhat shocking for those who haven't been to Europe in a while. The world's on sale right now because of the strength of the US dollar, but that hurts numbers for financials when they come back to the United States for exports because of that piece of it, because US exports aren't as US exports are not as affordable now because of the strength of the dollar. And it's not just there, it's everywhere. When I went to South Africa just 2 months ago, I think it was 15.2, 15.3 to 1 was the exchange rate. It's now 17 to 1 rand to dollar there. So the strength of the dollar is impacting things as well. And then we just have general inflation. These are inflations worldwide, chicken prices, corn meals, etc., up significantly. So this is a specific issue when you start looking at the CPI, so to speak, being at what it is, and all of these figures is significantly higher than that. And I think your own bills will sort that out when you sort through the government data versus what you're actually spending when you go to the grocery store. There's a misery index. And as you can see here in the US, it spiked once COVID happened. We did not like to be locked down. But as you can see, UK and the Euro area, since the war started, has really started to overtake the United States in terms of that misery index. So All of that affects retail. It affects psyche. It affects how people spend and where they spend, and those things we have to take into consideration as we look forward. The CPI from the United States here says that we're at 8.5% inflation year to year, of which food at home is 13.1% increase. Food away from home at restaurants is 7.6 there. The prices at the supermarket have gone up faster than the prices at restaurants. And when you look at the data regarding where people are eating, it wouldn't surprise you because the volume is increasing significantly and has been at the restaurants as people want to get out. Next is energy. Everything energy is driving things up dramatically, although we're seeing fuel prices drop a little bit there. And apparel prices there, to highlight down at the bottom, 5.1%, much lower than everything else in terms of inflation. This is the first time in the US that we've had all three indicators since 1980 have been up at least 10%. Electricity and utilities, gas and other fuels, and food at home, all being above 10%. It's the first time in 40 years that that has happened. So that's a tough mixture when it comes to retail sales and what is going on for sure. Wages are not keeping up with the pace of inflation. We know that. This was back in May. It's only gone up a little bit more here in terms of overall inflation related to that. We all know that. So what are people doing differently? They're taking fewer trips. They're buying in bulk. If you go to Sam's and Costco, they are packed. People going to discounters. If you go to discounters, off-brand companies, Aldi, those stores are very crowded for folks there. People are buying down to generic brands, which is a positive thing for retailers because they make 2 times the profit margin when you buy the store brand there. People entertaining at home instead of going out. I think that's very much an income thing. For the upper incomes, it's get out, go to concerts, get away, make travels there. But for everybody else, it's, let's eat at home a lot less. And we'll talk about a little bit more of each of those things as well. Savings rate has dropped. Everybody got all that money from the government, and that has now dropped to the lowest level. It's starting to rebound slightly from the lowest level earlier in the summer. But the average family or the average household is spending $717 more per month than they did a year ago. So this is going to continue to drop right now if inflation stays where it is for things going forward, which just means less discretionary income, et cetera, as we look at retail sales. Good news is that gas prices are falling. Bad news is they cost about $400 billion more in the last year for the average, or for the country. That was $400 that didn't go into other discretionary spending because it went into the gas tank. Generally, and I've got to walk in that fine line on politics here, but going back 30 years, there's only been one stimulus plan where the government has given out money in mass to people, individual consumers in the population, where it did not drive up fuel prices significantly. About 40 to 60% of every type of stimulus goes into gas tanks and oftentimes goes to Saudi Arabia and OPEC and others because of the benefit there, as well as to U.S. oil companies there. But the oil companies record profits because that's what happens when the government gives out money there. Now, there's only been one time that hasn't happened, and that was the first stimulus after COVID, when it was that part of that PPP and that piece of it. And that's because the demand simply wasn't there. Everybody was locked down. That's the only stimulus where the government's given out money in the last 25, 30 years where fuel prices didn't significantly go up. So 400 billion is what we estimate is roughly the loss of discretionary income due to the cost of gas. So what about retail sales? Well, let's go back to December. Let's go back prior to the conflict and before we had the most significant inflation. For the year of 2021, retail sales increased 18.2%. To put that in perspective, we added over $880 billion to the retail economy. That is the entire retail economy of India. Okay, so we are dealing with tremendous consumption and overconsumption, once again, fueled by a lot of this money that government has handed out to people there. And as you can see, there was a huge jump for the year in specialty soft goods and specialty hard goods, convenience and gas because of fuel prices. But restaurants, people were getting out, they were buying new clothes, they're going to concerts, they're doing things. That's what we saw towards the end of the year. This is obviously right before Omicron started to hit. January, a little bit slower, but still up 12.7% for the month. February, very strong again. Started to rebound from Omicron, up 17.7% for the month. Then March hit and things started to slow a bit. Then we got to April and we started to see some negative things start to hit. May, department stores went negative there. June, we've got drugs, cosmetics went negative, as well as department stores, but especially soft goods were hanging in there for that spring wardrobe that wasn't there because of the comparisons the year before. July, this is where we were, still up 11% for the month, $350 billion more this year than in 2021 for the first 6 months there. Okay, so we're still up in July. Okay, but what's the reality? Let's put those CPI figures on top of things. And this is what it feels like. Okay, and this is why it doesn't feel like retail sales is up, because the inflation aspect of it. So these lines represent where the individual CPI would hit if you subtract that from the sales gains there. So every sector except for restaurants and pure play e-commerce in July, because we had Prime Day, every one of those sectors except those is now negative on a per unit basis for things there. It's not tremendously negative. It's not whole, sky is falling negative, but it is negative. And that's where I want to phrase things here is be really careful that we don't get too negative on things or too positive on things as well. We're still up. We're still up for the year. Things are slowing down, but things were up so much and has grown so much in the last 2 years that we're taking a breather here, and this has a cleansing effect, okay, in terms of consumers, but also a cleansing effect in terms of retailers and types of retailers that succeed. So it's not all bad news just because we go negative there in these individual segments that are here, and there's some cleaning out that is happening. Next, for the year, as I mentioned, $350 billion change so far for things there. Let's go to individual retailers, and this is really a difference of segments, retail performance, and overall. If you've paid any attention to the news, Walmart, Target, Home Depot, Lowe's, and Amazon got their stocks got creamed because they had their own boats and they were well prepared for a spring that had a lot of furniture and a lot of clothing and a lot of DIY and all of those sort of things. And then the war broke out and inflation grew, and they were stuck with many, many billions of dollars in overstocks. Well, Walmart is down to about $1.5 billion of overstocked inventory value that they wish they could just write off. The CFO wants to write off. Target just bit the bullet and said, second quarter, we're trying to get as much of this out of our system as we can. They put everything on sale and tried to clear that out. So I'm really bullish on Target going forward. I love what Brian Cornell is doing there and for things there. Home Depot, really, really strong. Contrast that with Lowe's, and now you see the difference between the professionals and the consumers there for consumer products, Lowe's being more consumer driven. But then you get to these other segments here, Kohl's, etc. So the thing to remember is that you will need to subtract 5 to 13%, okay, because that's the CPI or an inflation impact. So you take these things negative to give a real view of how's it going in those organizations. And Walmart is still really, really strong with their net income growing, despite taking out anywhere about, let's say, 10% of that going forward because of their grocery mix related to that. So that just gives you an idea of what's going on. Department stores are getting hit heavily, as well as specialty soft goods are getting hit heavily right now. But their comparisons are really tough because of things last year. So we really have an economy of the haves and have-nots. If you have owned a home or you have stock ownership, the last 5 years was pretty good. In fact, home appreciation in the last 5 years through June was more than the total value of all the homes in the United States in the year 2000. Just massive, massive growth there. We have more home ownership than we've ever had, but it's not equal. Okay, by demographic, it is vastly different there, and that housing affordability has gotten way worse. It now takes 32.7% of the median household income. This is with a 20% down payment to make the house payments required. That's 13% higher than it was pre-pandemic as a figure, and traditionally it's been about 23.5% for the same measure for the last 25 years. So what happens? People started to move high cost states to lower cost states, driving up prices, governments handing out money. All that ends up making things far less affordable for those who have been on fixed income or rely often on the stimulus payments, the child tax care payments, or anything that relies on government benefits. There was times where you got money from the government, but that money has dried up. And right now, it is significantly difficult, more difficult for people that are on fixed incomes than it is for those that are not. And if you have a house and you have stocks, you're in the haves section of things. So one of the things that there's a research, and I don't have the updated data, but it shows 5 years post-recession, what percentage of the benefit went to each income group. And after the Great Recession, because of the growth in tech stocks and everything else, 114% of the benefit 5 years later went to the top 10% incomes. My guess is we're probably at about 125 to 130 coming out of COVID because of this home ownership and stock ownership related things. And we've really got haves and have-nots, and this just honestly, it's just not sustainable. But this impacts retailers. We've got persistent labor issues in our market that are affecting things. One of the good positive things is Lowe's is offering bonuses, quarterly bonuses to their employees rather than continuing to raise wages, doing it in bonuses so they can get back to a more stable amount if inflation lowers there. But we're still seeing about 4 million workers short in retail. So we've had this massive growth. We added India last year, more stores, more locations, but we've got 4 million fewer workers that are doing that thing. That's a big issue that we've got, and we've got things and that's driving tech spend, and why, although retail sales may be going down, I don't believe we are in a tech recession for retail. And we'll get into some of those details why. We have the port issues. Port issues in China. Okay, COVID. It takes 3 to 8 days for every day a port is shut down to work through the backlog with overtime there. So when Shanghai was down 40 days, that gives you anywhere from, what is that, 120 to 320? No, I'm sorry. Yeah. Is that right? 120 days to 320 days of time to work through the backlog there. The average time now to get a container from port to its final location in the U.S. is now 74 days. So what's that mean? If it's not in the water in the next 2 weeks, it's not making it for holiday season to be here in time to get on the shelves at the beginning of holiday season. And that's the issue. So let's show this a little bit more graphically. The amount of cargo at sea is down considerably. It's 30% lower than it was a year ago. So people are starting to scale back on the amount of stuff coming in. The schedule reliability is still less than half of what it was pre-pandemic. So even if you've got it and it's coming and you place the orders, what you think is going to happen to get here, it doesn't get here. And this has huge ramifications when it comes to inventory distortion and out of stocks and overstocks. Next, we had In October, we all know, we all saw the pictures off the California coast of all these boats off the coast of LA and Long Beach. That has improved drastically. The problem is no longer the issue off the coast. The problem is in the railroads, in the rail yards, and the truckers on the West Coast, but also backups on the East Coast. But the biggest problem is this is Shanghai. You can't even see it. You can see Shang. Okay. This is right when Shanghai ports opened after the COVID lockdown. Okay. May 10th, a month later. Any difference? Hard to say any difference. This is only cargo vessels. This doesn't include oil tankers. This doesn't include fishing boats, anything. You can see how just massively jammed. Here we are in August, okay, of what it looks like in August. And now we've got more problems that are coming there. There's a drought that is in Sichuan province. Rainfall's 45% below normal in an area that relies on hydropower. We only hear about Lake Powell and Lake Mead here in the United States, but this is a huge problem. Consumption's up 25% because a lot of these people bought air conditioning for the first time, and that hydropower production's down 51% for the last year. They halted all of their aluminum capacity in the Sichuan province, 1 million tons of aluminum due to the power shortages. Factories have been shut down for 6 days, and this is an area that produces 20% of the lithium and 13% of the silicon in all of China. So it's a major production area for all the EV stuff and everything that everybody wants to buy to get off oil. So that is an issue there. But it's not just there. In the UK, we've got strikes, an 8-day strike in Felixstowe there. It's going to take 24 days to get through that backlog. And the main thing is the company offered 7% raise, but the prices in July alone were up 10%. So certainly valid concerns, but causes havoc in the supply chain. The U.S. challenge, we had trucker protests in Oakland. It's still not worked through the backlog 6 weeks later. We have 35,000 containers waiting for rail transport because we don't have enough people working in the railroad industry to get it off out of there. We've got the ports east of LA now have a lot of vessels that are waiting. We've got empty containers in mass. There's 87,000 empty containers at LA and Long Beach ports right now in the supporting yards around those they're in the way type of thing there. But the good news in all of this is the cost of a container has dropped back closer to normal where things were. So instead of being 8 to 9 times more, it's down to about 2.5 times the cost it was prior to the pandemic. So we're starting to see things come down. Put this in economic and retail terms, people are continuing to buy more online, even for essentials. North America and EMEA are the only places in the world where people go to stores more for essential items of groceries, home goods, and health and beauty products. The rest of the world has moved to digital for that, which is good and bad. Because why is that? Because the winners are taking advantage of that. They're investing much heavier in that. They have much higher sales for digital as a result. They're expecting much higher sales related to things, the winners, the best performing retailers. The problem, they're losing their shirt. And this is an example from grocery only. As you can see, the average grocery store loses up to 15 points of margin if they're delivering product without charging a fee as well as picking it. And so there's this massive move to get to profitability that is a lot of technology involved that we're going to talk about today, and lots of investment. And it's one of the reasons why I think the technology recession in retail, we're not facing one of those anytime soon right now. There may be a slight slowdown in certain categories, but not if it has anything to do with optimizing the digital journeys, because so few have done that today for these different types of journeys. So thanks to Tools Group and this consumer study, we're just giving you a little taste of some data that is really, really concerning. We asked consumers if their trust in their local retailers to be in stock with what they want to buy, when they want to buy it, has improved or decreased in the last 2 years. People go to stores because they need it now. They expect you to be in stock for that. So you can see mass merchants and electronics, 7.4% of consumers increase their trust in their local retailers. What's so scary about that is Amazon. Okay, it's anywhere from 4 to 35 times more increase in trust related to Amazon in the last 2 years. Now, as well, decreasing trust there, 35% decrease their trust in their local mass merchants, 33% in electronics. This is why the inventory position and fixing the inventory is so crucial. Amazon here, 26%. People are not as happy with Amazon as they once were either for longtime Amazon customers. These are factors all related to inventory distortion and having in stock what the customer wants to buy here. And the thing for Amazon that's so concerning for their physical retailers is for the higher incomes, that trust has increased significantly more. So over $100,000, 50% increase, over $150,000, 36% increase in trust to Amazon. Amazon's a wholesale. It is a marketplace, okay, and they're competing with individual retailers generally, so they get a benefit. But in the mind of the consumers, they're one place, and it's one place to go to get the items there, and that is concerning for physical retailer and why it is so important. So all of that news, all that negative news here. Any good news? Yeah. Winter grade gas is usually cheaper. That is coming here. The cost of containers dropping. Unemployment is still low, and consumers are still shopping, although they're scaling back. The CD has revised COVID requirements. That means we get to be in person at NRF and Grocery Talk and our grocery shop and other places. Plus, Retail ROI, Super Saturday can be in person again. Yay. That's a big thing. The world is on sale if you're traveling. If you have the opportunity to travel, you have a great opportunity to do so because of the strength of the dollar right now. If you can find a flight and you don't check your bags, you're good. There are deals abound if you're patient. There's going to be some serious overstocks when it comes to back to school and things that didn't make it in time. Those will be on sale in late September and early October as they try to clean out that merchandise throughout the year. We haven't had any major hurricanes yet this year. We've certainly had some rain, and for those of people that have been impacted by that, they have been hit hard for that. But we have not had the major devastation of a hurricane yet this year. It's been quite quiet, to be honest. And then finally, specifically for us, the IT spend in retail is holding to forecast. We really believe right now, from what we're seeing a little bit of softness in Europe. We're seeing a little bit of softness in especially soft goods in North America and some in Asia. But we think the canary in the coal mine is really going to be heavy hardware, things like point of sale. And we have not seen any impact yet in terms of demand or anything for point of sale technology. If we've seen it, it's been at the smaller mom and pop level who are really under stress with these drops, not at the major chain level of things there. And oh yeah, there's one other bit of good news that's really important. It's football season, guys. And that is always good news out there. And it's good for everything except for my marriage. But other than that, I'm so thankful that football season is here, and that's some good news for things. And so before I turn it over to Lee and we go into the inventory distortion specifics there, we've got a question for chat for you guys to go ahead and type away on. Is this the end of just-in-time inventory for retail? I wrote a post on it. I'd love to get your views in chat, so go ahead and type away. And with that, I am going to invite Lee back on. Lee, if you will unmute your mic and join us.
All right. Well, thank you for the molasses there after the sulfur, Greg. Has anybody passed out from the bad news? There is some good news, all right? And we're going to touch base on some of the results of this study that we've just completed in terms of inventory distortion. Again, take this news. Some of it's going to be things you can work with, all right? So don't be disappointed if there's real big numbers that kind of scare you. In terms of overall inventory distortion, and by that we mean the combination of overstocks and out of stocks, we're talking about almost $2 trillion for 2022. All right, now to get your hands around that number, that would be the equivalent of the 15th largest economy on the planet. All right, so we're talking about an economy bigger than Canada, bigger than Australia, bigger than Poland and Egypt. All right, so it's pretty significant numbers there. The out of stocks, 1.2 trillion. That would be the equivalent of Australia. Overstocks at 758 billion. That's the equivalent of South Africa. All right, so that's trying to get your arms around what we're talking about here. There's increases here. A lot of the increase is attributable to the increase in retail sales over the past couple of years, which at least worldwide we're talking about 18%. That's a pretty significant jump from 2020. In terms of the change, on this sheet, we're talking about green numbers as being very good. In other words, an improvement is a negative number. So North America, EMEA, and LATAM are all improving in terms of what things look like back in 2020. For the U.S., a lot of overstocks for us, mainly because retailers planned huge demand in the spring, and it just didn't quite develop the way it needed to for moving that stuff out of the way. EMEA, a lot of slowdown in demand, the war, COVID. The interesting thing that happened there was European governments did a great job of protecting employment. They didn't just throw cash out there. They did it on a percentage basis. It worked, at least in my opinion, as an analyst, it worked a heck of a lot better than it did in this country. LATAM, South America, they're struggling. They're still struggling post-COVID, and overall lower sales there. The big red number there for the APAC region, again, huge increase in sales there. A lot of it has to do with the fact that their middle class is still trying to figure out who they are and what they do. In terms of retail, it's just not nearly as disciplined as it is in some of the other regions in the world, and that still continues to cause a lot of problems in terms of inventory distortion. By region, in terms of out of stocks and overstocks, this is the percent of retail sales. Real simple. If in North America we solve the problem of inventory distortion, that would be a 6.2% bump in retail sales. Going forward, the same kind of graph, except we're looking at it from a historical standpoint. You see a little bit of the bullwhip effect there. I think Jeff mentioned that in one of the comments here. It's simply the small changes in consumer behavior have a huge progressive impact throughout the supply chain, and that's part of what you're seeing here. In terms of North America, definitely. You've got 2020. We saw a whole heck of a lot of out of stocks. If you tried to get diapers or frozen pizza or pretty much anything that was scarfed up quickly, the wipes and so forth, that issue is declining now. The pendulum's swinging back a little bit the other way, and we are still dealing with a significant number of overstocks there. EMEA, same kind of thing. They had a big jump in 2020, just like we did, and they're coming back, but a little bit slower. For APAC, there's the discipline aspect in their retail is still the issue there. So they don't have anywhere near the bullwhip effect, but they're still trying to figure out how do we do this thing called retail. And then LATAM, their biggest issue continues to be the lack of product availability for folks. Going forward, when you look at the individual segments, this is pretty interesting information, simply because you've got food, drug, and FDCM, what we call FDCM, food, drug, mass merchants, and convenience stores. These guys, they've done a great job in getting their systems and processes taken care of. They're working real well. They've done a pretty good job at getting things optimized, as opposed to just throwing the systems out there and seeing what happens. In terms of general merchandise, they've got a pretty big number there. A lot of overstocks there. They've got, and pretty, again, back to the APAC region, that has to do with their middle class growing and growing now. They're actually have money now to spend on things they never had the opportunity to do so before. In terms of for hospitality, pretty decent number there. We're talking about an industry that really got hammered during COVID, and they're doing a great job of recovering from that. Now, when you go in the store, why do customers leave without buying something? And this gets back to the idea that and we're talking about, for IHL, it's talking about the mid to late 1990s, when we first started looking at the idea of inventory distortion. Back then, it was mostly just in-store stuff. Amazon came along in 95. Walmart had their website in 2000. And a whole bunch of retailers followed on after that. When that happened, a lot of siloing of systems to get those websites up and running. At that point, the IT infrastructure simply could not support the kind of things that need to be in place to make some of these problems go away. Biggest issue here for worldwide is empty shelves, and whether that the change in that, I've got that number here somewhere. Oh no, I don't either. I lied. I'll ask me the question, I'll get it to you. Biggest issue is empty shelves, and whether it was the products simply not being there, or in the case, another issue that they find, they couldn't find help to find the product. In other words, if there's certain retailers, you go in and you ask them where something is, and retail associate might not have a clue as to where it is. The other issue is the employee can't find the item. In other words, you were able to find an employee to help you, but they couldn't find the item, or it was in a locked case and they didn't have the key, or it was on a shelf that was too high up. 12.7% of the out of stocks that's not caught by the IT systems. That's what you're seeing there. And again, this is a result of surveying a whole lot of consumers that basically said, we asked them, hey, when you went to the store and tried to buy something, why did you not buy it at the store? Moving on, $85.9 billion in the consumer staples. Again, this is the food, drug, C-stores, that kind of thing. The change, that's a good thing. The decline in that total number there, it's always a good thing. A lot of it has to do with improvements in systems, improvements in processes. The labor distribution is getting better, and automation is helping out there. And Greg's going to talk to some of the specific systems in just a few slides. Moving on, what's to blame for inventory distortion? Now this I know I have these numbers. Obviously supplier issues is a big deal here. That number is up 140% from 2020, and obviously the log jam that Greg showed in the shipping maps is a large part of that. Personnel issues, they've increased about 31% since 2020, and a lot of that has to do with the labor shortages, or the inability of people to bring themselves to go back to work after having the government support them for a while. Spoilage and lockdowns, $265 billion. Now that's considerably better. That's 53% better than it was just a couple of years ago. And then theft, internal systems, and so forth and so on. A lot of different places to lay blame. And we've got again, Greg is going to touch base on some of the systems to help that stuff out. Here's the same data, except in terms of the percentage increases or decreases. Spoilage and lockdown obviously got a whole lot better than it was back in 2020, and then as attributable, and I can attest to that, having sons that are in the teens and 20s that they love their frozen pizza. And I think this is where I hand it back to Greg, or maybe not.
Oh, here I am. Sorry, I had to turn the mic back on.
Okay.
There. So All right, so let's get into technical solutions here. So we start off as there's some quick solutions that don't rely on necessarily on the ports as long as the product is in here in the United States already or where your local area is. Okay, so long lines. Retailers lose $27 billion a year. North American retailers $27 billion a year in sales because lines are too long there. As well, price discrepancies at the shelf lose retailers $90 billion in sales alone. If you've heard my story about Diet Coke at Walmart, they said, I don't have the people to change the prices right now. So what does that mean? Massive adoption of electronic shelf labels, if you can get your hands on it, self-checkout devices, and allowing your customers to check out on their phones, trusting your best customers there to be able to use their own phone to check out. But you've got to have the security solutions in place to watch that, to audit those things so you don't get robbed there. I was at a loss prevention conference last week, and Jesse from Myers, I think, shared that they were able to recapture $100 million in sales at self-checkout alone by using AI and machine learning and lowering the weight tolerances. But to be able to see what was going on and see what people were trying to steal there, $100 million that they regained in sales as a result of that technology. Next are big changes, but they have substantial results when you go through them. The first one being order management. You've got to get to a single view of the truth for your customer data and your customer information. That is step one there. Everything else doesn't really matter if you don't have that single version of the truth and where your inventory is for things. Second is computer-aided ordering for as many categories as you can get your hands on. The retailers that performed the best had those that had CAO saw 18% higher sales growth than their competitors in the same sector. A really, really big deal there. Voice recognition, using voice systems, particularly for adoption of headsets, order picking, extending out into the parking lot for BOPIS, all those sort of things. Huge growth, having huge impact. Those are solutions that can be done pretty quickly there. And then there's a whole bunch of others that fit into this that have significant impact, better demand planning and forecasting and inventory management. But then the analytics side, moving from just what happened, okay, to being able to do scenarios, and better yet, let's move to prescriptive analytics that says, this is what you should do. Okay, you're swimming in data. How do you get to a situation where the system itself can tell you what needs to change for you to get the best results, taking in all these data sources there that are involved to do it. LP solutions, we mentioned the example at Meyer there, just to be able to recapture that employee and customer theft. If you haven't seen the gatekeeper video that shows the carts locking up all four wheels on YouTube, it's pretty hilarious to watch there. RFID and computer vision continues to grow significantly to help improve the speed at which things can be tracked at the store and understand the current store situation. And that's everything from robots going through the aisles to stationary cameras on the shelves that are taking pictures and uploading that to the cloud for analysis. Those are systems and solutions that are in play that are improving the inventory situation. Next, having a second location for your digital orders, whether that is a physical one where you're using employees or whether that is fully optimized with automation and robotics, or as Target and Walmart are more doing, they've got these order staging centers now for their online orders. They get the inventory from the store, but it's staged and shipped from another location to optimize the profitability there. 411% growth happening there. Robotics in all aspects of operations, micro fulfillment, as well as at major warehouse studies, 600% growth in those areas. But the big race at the end of the day is first one to accurate inventory wins. And this is why fixing this issue with inventory distortion is so critical. And so with that, we're going to turn on the chat and we're going to turn the cameras back on. And now I am properly attired to come back for Q&A. I've got my Buckeyes on. I've made the switch, and we're ready to get into some questions. Before I go, though, I want to do two things. One, I want to share with you a situation for we're going back live for Retail ROI Super Saturday. And we have the ability to do that, and you can sign up. Each one of you signing up can give us literally $5,000 worth of sponsorships. That helps 300 kids get computer labs there as well. I just launched on the screen. You can download the slides, the report, learn about our over and out inventory distortion matrix from this link right here if you want to start clicking on that. And Lee, let's go to questions.
All right. First question right off the bat, where do you think the IT spend slowdown is going to happen?
Well, as I sort of mentioned there before, I think we're going to see it in Europe first because that's the toughest environment right now because of just the high raise in the gas prices and lower disposable income. In the United States, I think we'll see it in specialty stores, particularly in the tier 2, tier 3 side of things, and then from there it will grow up in specialty before it hits any other segment related to that. Department stores as well in that space.
Okay. I'll answer. Forget who it was, but somebody asked, how do retailers audit accuracy when they can pay in the app? In other words, Sam's Club has a scan and go and that kind of thing.
Yeah, they've got
at least where. I'm sorry, say again?
They have got that guy at the door, that person at the door.
Yeah, they've got somebody at the door that checks every item in your basket and looks at your receipt. So, and they've got the handheld device that scans. So, it's pretty quick.
And I think Meyer, others shared that what they do is you basically get a approval as a good customer to use their checkout on the phone, and you're subject to spot audits. And as you become more reliable, those spot audits go away.
Gotcha. Question was raised, are there certain retail segments contributing higher to inventory distortion?
Yeah, right now, when you look at the situation, the mass merchants got hit hard in North America with overstocks there. So that was a major increase. That was one of the only segments that really increased in North America, where so much was done to improve things with systems and operations. Ironically, it was the best performing retailers that got hit the hardest by the rapid change due to the war there. I think you're going to see Europe because once again, in mostly discretionary categories of clothing, once again there, and to a certain degree, restaurant spend because of the rise in fuel oil and heating the homes, etc. there. And then I think it's going to hit the small mom and pop first before it hits the big bookstore. So.
Okay. You touched on this. Somebody asked, where are winning retailers dealing with the problem? Inventory distortion.
Where are they? Well, the biggest area that they're hitting now, first of all, winning retailers tended to start the process of upping their IT spend much faster. We had a 25% increase in IT spend as a result of COVID because of people having to now deploy an e-commerce model at a much faster rate. So the winning retailers did a lot of that blocking and tackling first. They had contactless payment in place. They updated their point of sale systems there. They had updated the mobile devices for their managers and everybody else. So they were already spending at a higher level, anywhere from 20% higher than other retailers up to that time frame. Everybody else just started to catch up. And so what does that mean for the winning retailers where they're spending now? They're spending on those things that improve the margins and the performance of those online digital orders, because it's a race against time. You don't make up a minus 15%, by volume. You have to improve those processes and those technologies as a result of that. So.
Okay. Here, do you foresee a retail recession in 2023?
You want to handle that one? Well, I'll take it. I don't mind. I personally think, it depends on how you define recession, and I hate to get somewhat political on this because what does it mean to recede? Ask the people that are in Mississippi right now or in Dallas right now. It means it moves back from where it was. So technically, we are in a recession right now, even though the numbers are positive in dollars overall. So do I think we're going to in 2023? It really depends on how long this war goes, and how long it takes for that inflation to get under control. As long as the jobs stay strong, and employment stays strong, it's going to be mild, regardless of what it is. It's not going to be like what we had with COVID or the Great Recession related to that.
Yeah. I think the definition is actually going to be, home to home.
Sure.
If you've received a 5% pay increase and you're dealing with 9% inflation, you've got a recession on your hands
Yeah,
for that home.
a lot of people didn't get it, haven't gotten any increase.
Yep.
So that is technically a recession in that environment. Yeah.
Yeah. Question is raised: if recession becomes official, will it impact consumer spending?
Yeah, because there's a certain psychological thing to it. That's why they say, if you're paying down debt, it isn't necessarily the highest interest rate to pay off first. It's the lowest balance to pay off first, because it's this debt snowball. It's a psychological impact, and that happens both positively and negatively. And that's the thing that discourages me the most about having to go through the news every day for my job, is you go through all this stuff and it's all bad news and all sky is falling all the time, because that gets 10 times more clicks. So if that starts getting promoted, that's going to impact people, because 80% of people only get their news from headlines.
Yeah.
And it's usually headlines that are being driven by an algorithm on their social media platform, and reaffirms their bias. So that has a big impact. So
Okay. You see a knee-jerk reaction as a result in IT spend?
a knee-jerk reaction. I guess I don't understand the context. What I
think is geared along the lines of the retailer is seeing the recessionary aspect in the economy. Do you think they're going to pull back?
Yeah, yes and no. Some of them have been waiting for this technology for so long due to backlogs on the hardware components, where there's chip shortages. It's no longer the processors necessarily, it's the things like power over Ethernet chips and stuff like that that affect things. And we've seen people have backlogs that are up to a year on some of these hardware products related to that. If we see a pullback, I expect it to be maybe in some of the software areas, only because the fact that those are easier to say, hey, if we turn these off now, we can turn them back on a little bit later. That whole SaaS model allows for the crank up, crank down side of it. But I don't expect it largely, because so many of the margin improvements are related to software. And like I said, it's a race against time. If you want to stay in business, you better be investing in these technologies, or otherwise this overall theme of moving more online is just going to kill you as a company.
Yeah. This is a little bit more esoteric. What are your thoughts on what's driving the IT spend? Is it truly the desire of winning retailers to stay ahead of the pack, or is it an absolute necessity for somebody to just keep being able to tread water?
Well, it's those margins. It's those margin losses. It was such a rapid change to online ordering due to COVID that those losses of 5 to 15 points of margin versus the walk-in customer is so critical. But where we're seeing it as well, the winning retailers have shored up a lot of that. But where they're also investing is improving the customer experience at the store level. And they need to. And when we release that data from Tools Group, it's going to be shocking to look at the impact of these out of stocks when people are coming into the store, but also the data related to impulse items and how Amazon Prime members react versus not react. How many times do you give a store on average? That data is pretty shocking. When we release that in about, I think, 40 days or so, it's pretty shocking data. So I don't expect the smart retailers. Now, there's a lot of retailers that aren't smart, but the smart retailers to shy away from the investments in technology, because that is, the labor's not coming back. That's the thing that helps them perform and potentially grow going forward. And the realization that there are going to be more retailers that fail as a result of not investing, which means that their piece of the pie can grow if they do the right things.
Yep. Okay. We are at the top of the hour.
All righty. Well, everybody, hey, thanks so much. So glad it's football season. Think of some good news. Sorry I had to present so much stuff that was negative, but there is good news out there. We're so thankful for you. Thanks again to our sponsors for being here today. Thanks for spending your time with us. We appreciate it. All right. Have a great weekend. Take care. Bye-bye.
Take care, guys.